just a little piece in the bigger puzzle here. Of course, you know, there are many concerns and there are many different opinions about what is torture and what is not torture, but what is perfectly clear and without doubt is the United States policy is we do not torture. The United States has signed treaties saying we do not torture. We are staring into an abyss and it's staring back at us and we don't do it. We are America.
There have been times where America's shown arrogance.
All right, he got some flack for saying that, the line about Americans have shown arrogance. But he continued, and that's important. None of his critics, by the way, Murph, mentioned what the president went on to say right after he was done with that bold statement. Here it is.
In Europe, there is an anti-Americanism that is at once casual but can also be insidious.
You are you the one that said his middle name, Hussein, a lot?
Oh, yeah. No, he said at the inaugural. He said Barack Hussein.
You have a problem with that? Oh, come on. What was his intention?
What was
his intention? Your intention was to portray the president of the United States, or then the candidate for the presidency, as a foreign person, as a them, as opposed to an us. You went out of your way to try to make him seem different.
The government taking over the banks and the government taking over Detroit. And again, to my conservative friends, in the words of Billy Joel, he didn't start the fire. This was George Bush that nationalized the banks. It was George Bush that bailed out Wall Street and Detroit. This president has continued that.
Well, I think we have to remember that it wasn't just Obama who wanted to close Guantanamo. Of course, George Bush wanted to close it. The Republicans are sort of acting like Barack Obama's going to hand them a Greyhound ticket and a wad of cash and send them on their way. And let's face it, that's not going to happen.
The Attorney General said as much today.
Yes, they're not going to be released. There's only a handful that are being talked about actually being released, and the rest will go into maximum security prisons, which we have people, you know, we just had Molly talking about, we have terrorists who we have in maximum security prisons. We have people like Charles Manson. We have, you know, all sorts of horrible people who are in prisons, and really it's not quite the same thing as just letting them go in the community. We are able to have these people in prisons and keep Americans safe.
She accused Rush Limbaugh of treason, and she said, I think maybe Rush Limbaugh was the 20th hijacker, but he was just strung out on OxyContin and missed his flight.
Comedy is, by definition, inappropriate. I mean, this is just comedy. And we're talking about a guy in Rush Limbaugh who is inappropriate half the time I hear him on the radio.
I think she could have done a fine job that was in better taste. That's
Speaking of dinners.
So could Rush. Yeah. He could be in a lot better taste on a daily basis in which he's delivering misinformation, lies to a large audience in America. That is far more serious than telling a couple of jokes at a banquet.
I think the president opened the door on this when he threw that word out, empathy. He's looking for someone, not a great constitutional scholar or a jurist.
I have a slightly different take on the empathy business. I think he wants someone for a threshold question, a constitutional scholar, an impressive choice. That's his whole background. He's a constitutional law professor.
Okay.
But he wants someone from that world who also has empathy.
Phil Cracker, Minneapolis. Is Glenn Beck forgetting the $8 billion Acorn is getting from the economic stimulus package? Well, that is not true, Phil. Acorn competes for public funds on the local level. Betty Martin, Oregon. Obama has signed Acorn up to do this 2010 census. Again, not exactly true. Betty, some chapters of Acorn will be paid to canvass a few minority districts. This is foolish, given the group's dubious reputation for honesty, but Acorn is a small player.
The leadership of the United States. There's growing evidence, Danny, that torture was aimed at producing an Iraq al-Qaeda link. That was the first priority, not protecting the United States. We now know that from Lawrence Wilkerson, who was Colin Powell's chief of staff. When you look at the first questions that were asked of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, they were not about a pending attack or what he knew. It was about, do you know about links between Iraq and al-Qaeda?
Nancy Pelosi said yesterday that this is about politics, and her concern was about winning majorities in the Congress and electing a Democratic president. That's where she stood. That's
so
what her focus was.
You're more concerned about the credibility of the Speaker of the House and a particular memory that she has, as opposed to that the United States might have used torture to fabricate information that took us into war.
But, Willie, that's not stopping Republicans from treating this as like a presidential campaign. They're all jumping into it. This is a way for Republicans to get their juice back, to raise some money. So they're already sending reporters information about the possible picks. They're sending quotes from Senator Obama, Senator Biden about what they used to say about confirmations. So it doesn't matter what name is out there, you're going to hear that they're liberal and activist.
And one of those